Rimbai Shukti. Hallelujah. Okay. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. So here's I'm reading out of the Pilgrims and Plymouth Colony, and I searched for a statement. My book is falling apart here. No, I'm okay. I'm not going to die. Okay, all right. But I was looking through to complete my Happy Thanksgiving time. Thanksgiving again. Hope that you have a wonderful day of eating and all that kind of thing and experiencing the stuff that's going to happen. I know that tomorrow you'll be upset because you ate too much. I did too. So anyway, just listen to, it's 1620, okay? And we're waking up in the morning, and the Pilgrims are having that harvest. But there's a context of that and what happens as they matriculate or they become more. There's not very many of them. They've died a lot. They've had all kinds of problems, froze to death. I mean, come on. I mean, mothers that froze to death to keep their babies alive. I mean, so many stories. But although the Pilgrims had given thanks for the harvest in 1621, the tiny settlement containing about 60 persons was still nothing but a line of rude thatched huts strung along Plymouth's town brook. Their nearest English neighbors were either 100 miles away in the temporary scattered fishing villages on the coast of Maine, or to the south in Virginia. Farther north in Canada were the hostile French. The Dutch had built a trading post in that present-day Albany in 1614 and claimed the lands surrounding New York Harbor and the Hudson River. England lay 2 to 4 months away on the other side of the wintry gray waters of the Atlantic. To the west, behind them, were the forests of the wilderness, New England, ringed about by Indians, Palmet and Nauset on the Cape Cod, Wampanoag and Narragansett to the south and west, and the Massachusetts, that was the name of an Indian tribe, to the north of the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims must have looked anxiously to Captain Miles Standish, wondering if he could save the colony if it was attacked. The answer to that question is obvious. He couldn't. Bingo! He couldn't. I mean, of those 50 people that were left, half of them, or close to half of them, were women. I know that women can pull an arrow and bow it and, whatever, shoot a gun. But the Indians had them outnumbered by, hundreds to one. On November 11th, 1621, just a year after the Mayflower had first anchored off Cape Cod, the Pilgrims sighted a ship coming into the harbor at Plymouth. So this is just after the celebration of Thanksgiving. And those 90 Indians that came in, and they had a great time. And I think that there was a solidification of the relationship between the Massasoit and his Algonquian Indians, and so this whole group of people are now starting to get together. This is the wonderful thing. It's kind of like a church or a family. They became family. They cared about each other. I imagine that they did not really talk in the sense that when you go to a place where you don't speak the same language, it's basically like, you have to smile and say, I like you. If you don't, you get real angry and you look angry, then you talk by your expressions. But they played together and they were shooting arrows together, they played games, all that kind of thing. So it proved to be the 55 ton, what he says, the Pilgrims sighted a ship, a 55-ton ship called the Fortune. The Fortune. What a great name for a ship, for somebody that needs some fortune. Which had sailed from London 4 months earlier in July. On board were 35 men, women, and children who had come to live in Plymouth. Elder William Brewster was no doubt overjoyed to see his 28-year-old son, Jonathan. Edward Winslow welcomed his younger brother, John, and the entire band of saints must have gathered to greet for their former deacon from Leyden congregation, Robert Cushman. With Cushman was his 14-year-old son, Thomas, and the 19-year-old French-speaking Walloon, Philip de la Noye, an ancestor of President Franklin Roosevelt. The Fortune also carried several important papers. The first was a patent signed by Sir Ferdinando Gorges and the other members of the New England Council, the reorganized Plymouth Company. It promised that the Pilgrims' settlers had 100 acres of land apiece at the end of 7 years. The second was an angry letter from Thomas Weston asking the Pilgrims to copy out and sign their contract with the merchant adventurers. Many people don't know the story of this, but the Pilgrims had employed these merchant adventurers, that was the name of their company, to get them over there. And they were going to pay them off with all the bears, all the hides and everything, and all the money and everything. But they had nothing. When the Mayflower sailed back, they came back with nothing. We're reading about this. For the separatists had refused to put their names on the agreement before the Mayflower sailed. In other words, they didn't put it on until they got there. So that proved that they were going to pay them. They put the name on the list, and then they don't even go, or they turn around. You see, this is what they did. So Weston also explained that no cargo had returned to England in the Mayflower. That you send no lading in the ship is wonderful. In other words, full of wonder. Weston wrote, and worthwhilely distasted. I know your weakness was the cause of it. In other words, he knew that many of them died and they weren't able to make it through that first winter. And I believe more weakness of judgment than weakness of hands. Now he's putting them down a little bit. A quarter of the time you spent in discoursing, arguing, and consulting would have done much more, but that is past. His letter continued. Weston's letter also told the Pilgrims that unless the contract was signed, they could expect no more money and supplies from London. After Deacon Cushman preached a sermon on the dangers of self-love, urging the Pilgrims to sign, they stepped forward and put their names to the agreement with the merchant adventurers. And now I just wanted to see, think about it. Where did they get their sense of what to do? It came from a message from the pastor. The merchant adventurers, yes, were the capitalists. But the Pilgrims had nothing to do with that capitalistic idea. Capitalism really hadn't even become an idea yet. But greed was, and the merchant adventurers, they were taking a great chance to give the Mayflower and to take the Pilgrims to the New World. But it was something that you can understand the message that the pastor was preaching is, listen, these guys took a chance, and they got us here. And we need to be honest, and we need to pay them for what we owe them. And by the way, the Pilgrims did pay them back for all that they had contracted to. In these early years in New England, fish, furs, and lumber were the only valuable goods the Pilgrims could use in paying off their debt. Although they were to try to set up fishing stations in Cape Ann, the Pilgrims would never have much success as fishermen. But they had already begun cutting cedar logs and splitting them into capboards, and beaver trade with the Indians had been started. When Deacon Cushman left Plymouth a month later in December, the hold of the Fortune was laden with cedar capboards, several kegs of beaver pelts worth about 500 pounds, nearly half the amount owed to the London merchants. Also on board in Cushman's possession was a manuscript written by Edward Winslow and Governor William Bradford. It told the story of the Pilgrims' first discovery on Cape Cod, the visit to Massasoit, the first Thanksgiving. Just as the Fortune reached English Channel, she was captured by a French privateer and robbed of all of her cargo. Listen. Life is full of problems. If you think that this was going to be easy, and, walk through the, I went to church. Why didn't everything happen right? Where was God when the French came? Yeah, you understand? And they said, the French finally allowed the ship to sail to London, where Cushman informed Weston of the loss. Cushman then delivered the Bradford Winslow manuscript to a printer named John Bellamy, who published it in 1622 under the name of the mysterious J. Mort. For this reason, it is known that Mort's relation was the first printed account of the early settlement of Plymouth to be read by the public in England. Soon after the Fortune sailed away, Plymouth colony was alarmed by the threat of war by Indians. So they didn't get any money. Now they're doing the Indians. Listen, we've got it easy, people. We only have to deal with Fauci and and Biden. They're wimps and Gates, and they're wimps compared to what the Pilgrims had to put up with. And I mean, by the way, they were dropping like flies, dying. And so, listen to me. Let's be thankful. Who are we thankful for? Well, I've said this many times, but you got to be thankful for the people that the people that this is why when, as a pastor or as a family, you don't like it when your family just takes off. They move someplace else. They get a better situation. How many times do you have to do that before you realize that there is no better circumstance? Just like these guys. Would you rather have come over on the Mayflower, or would you rather have gone through what you have in your life? You might have been one of the ones that died at 15 or 17, or maybe even the baby that died, the first one. One thing that makes life rich is longness. It makes longness with a relationship, because we go through these problems. Sometimes we hurt each other. Sometimes we do good for each other, but the point is that we're family, and Jesus talks about that completely. And when we see something great happen in somebody's life, you see my brother, you see Alana's brother-in-law with her sister. The testimony of I'm looking at the ones that I'm seeing today: Jamie and Caitlin, and all the ones that stood up last night, Judy, and even my grandson, my first one, hallelujah, Spencer, and all these that give testimonies. The other ones, you guys didn't give testimonies. So, but we love you as much. You can give a testimony on a Sunday morning or Sunday night, as Pastor Josh really anointed us to do, because that's our family. What is God doing in your life? There should be almost at every service a testimony in the family of, hey, what's going on with you? And when we see people that are missing, after about a month, you kind of go, what happened to them? You know, what was going on? What did I do wrong? What did I do wrong to make them go? But you've got plenty of problems on your own. You understand? Everybody's got problems. It's not just that they didn't remember you. After a while, they do remember. But the point is that today, be thankful, and if you're not going to some place or to get someplace, ask somebody to come to your place, or just go to somebody and be thankful with your family, because we are family, and we are blessed to be part of a place where we live. I mean, some people are digging out snow. I mean, we have a little bit of a wind, and we think tragedy has launched itself in California. By the way, the media will tell us that we're just about ready to blow up. Everything's going to happen. There's fires everywhere. There's, the wind is blowing. Everything's going to happen. The devil's out there. He wants to steal your joy. Be joyful, love God, and have a great Thanksgiving day. God bless you, and that's today. Amen.